Logan Paul is a terrible person. Now let's bring it back to the start. Let's bring it back to where he started getting hate when everything went downhill. It was in Japan. Everybody knows where I'm going with this. He recorded a dead body who committed suicide in a forest. Him and his friends laughed about it. And what did the whole internet do? They start mocking him. They start making memes. They start throwing hatred around his name. He got canceled. He was on the news crying his eyes out. Made a video saying he was sorry. Everything was going downhill from him. Logan Paul, no more. Logan Paul is gone. We don't want Logan Paul. And then what did KSI do? KSI had a boxing match with Joe Weller, and he called out the Paul brothers. He called out Logan Paul, and this really saved Logan Paul because now he was able to make videos. He was able to respond back to KSI. So all the attention was coming back to Logan Paul. They were putting that forced situation behind them, and they were saying, "All right, you know what? You might have a chance with KSI. You know, we want to see this happen." It happened. It was a draw. Couple months passed by. They had a rematch. What happened? KSI won. Oh my God, is this the end of Logan Paul's career? He's lost. The forced situation is all going downhill from him. God is not on his side. And then what did he do? He promoted his stupid crypto scam. And then everybody was getting more hate on Logan Paul. You know, Logan Paul was not liked through these 1 or 2, 3 years. He was not liked at all through the forest situation and now this crypto scam. You know, people saying it was a crypto scam. He was trying to give his explanation on his podcast, trying to tell people, oh no, this what happened, whatever. And then not so far back, and this what really pissed me off. He kicked off one of his best friends, George Janko, all because his friend was so religious and he was a Christian. You know, you've seen it through the podcast. Anytime George Jenko would try to talk about God, or anytime George Jenko would try to have an opinion, Logan Paul will always shut it down. He will always trying to put doubt on him and put him in a lower place. And I don't know if you guys seen a couple of podcasts where George Jenko would just sit there and not say anything. An example of this was when they brought Shaq on the podcast. If you look at the Shaq podcast and you actually watch that podcast, Shaq even brought it up. Shaq looked at George Jenko and said, "Yo, does he talk? Is he going to say something?" And then Logan Paul and George Jenko, they just start laughing about it. George said, "Not because anytime I bring an opinion, you know, they don't listen or they tear it down." And if you keep watching the podcast, Shaq brought it up again. They were like, "Yo, what are you doing here? Just kick him out." You know, they made a joke about it. And then there was some other videos where George Janko on that same podcast with Logan Paul and Mike, they were talking about God and they were talking about religion. And then Logan Paul was literally just hating on his best friend's belief. What kind of friend sits there and hates on his best friend beliefs? Regardless if Logan Paul doesn't believe in it, that's his thing. If George Janko doesn't talk about God, you shouldn't either. And you shouldn't bring up his religion.
Logan Paul, not just a terrible person, but a terrible brother. Now, let me explain this a little bit. Let me go back a little bit further. Him and his brother Jake Paul made diss tracks on each other. I don't care how much beef me and my brother are having, we always solve it personally. Okay, we always solve it without the internet on a personal level. These guys were just making hatred videos, diss tracks. Logan Paul supposedly slept with his ex. Absolutely no morals in this situation, and they say they solved it, but in recent times on a podcast on Impulsive, they obviously still will have some type of animosity against each other. How and why do I know this? Because Logan Paul said every single opponent, Tommy Fury, Nate Diaz, every single one that Logan Paul wanted to fight, he chose to fight. He claims that they all chose Jake Paul because he was an easier opponent than Logan Paul. Now, whether this is true or not, I'll never bash my brother or put him down to stroke my ego. Absolutely not. Why would I claim I'm a better fighter than my brother just to stroke my ego, just to call him worse? And now let's look at the stats. So if he really does want to complain that Logan Paul is a better boxer than Jake Paul, well, let's see the opponents that Logan Paul has fought in. Let's see his record. He's obviously not better than Jake Paul. But back to what I was saying. Also in the podcast, he was saying how why didn't you promote Prime? Well, because it's not just your Prime bottle, dumbass. It has KSI's name on it. Why would he promote his moral enemy's brand on his one of his biggest fights? Absolutely not. And now, if we want to get more into the Prime bottle, imagine going behind your brother's back and starting a big brand with Jake Paul's moral enemy. Why would you do that? Why didn't you bring in Jake Paul? Why didn't you bring anybody else? David Dobrik, he has a bunch of people around him. Logan Paul has a bunch of celebrity friends, but he chose his moral enemy. This just shows Logan Paul doesn't have any brotherhood with Jake Paul. He doesn't respect him. He doesn't respect his opinions. Why didn't he talk with Jake Paul before starting his brand? If he really wanted him to market it in the first place, why did he even start it with KSI? See, Logan Paul always makes an excuse that Jake Paul just taking it way too serious. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal when it benefits Logan Paul, but when it doesn't, it's not my brother. It's not that serious. Anything that Logan Paul does is not that serious if it harms anything or if it's bad. But if it's good, yo, we all brothers here. You know, why didn't you want to market it? Let's market it. Again, to my conclusion, Logan Paul is such a bad person, such a bad brother. I would never go behind my brother's back or even on the internet to make a diss track just to get some clout or some attention.